Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets. Go to PropSwap.com and download the PropSwap app today. Andrew DiCecco is here for the Eagles and the Jets. We'll get some thoughts on that, some battles that are still out there, some things he's still looking at, who has stood out in this training camp, and more right now as we go to Andrew DiCecco from the InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast as he joins us right now during today's edition of Football at 4. Andrew, it's good to talk to you, man. How you been?
Yeah, Mike, I'm doing well, man. How have you been? It's been a while. Congratulations on all your baseball success.
Yeah, man. I was away for a while. I almost forgot what day it is, but Tuesday is here. It's me and you, and we got Eagles, Jets on Friday. But obviously there's so much more leading into this, and I want to kind of get your take on this seemingly new conversation between preseason games and joint practices and what these teams value more. It seems that the Eagles, Andrew, are valuing the joint practice more so than the preseason game.
Right, yeah, and the reason being is because they're able to give more exclusive looks. I mean, you don't really want to show much in the preseason. It's going to be mostly vanilla in the game situations because the tape's available to all 32 teams. But when you're in joint practices, that is exclusive to just those two teams. You're able to kind of practice things, such as if the Eagles want to work on run defense, and they can work on that. They can work on certain areas of their game and run their system the way they anticipate doing so without it really leaking out there and teams having that footage available to them. So I do see the advantage of doing that, Mike, but, I mean, it's hard to simulate those game reps, those snaps that are so vital when you're going against, another team out there. And for so many of these young players, I mean, that's so important right now. I mean, to make the jump from joint practices to on September 12th in Mercedes-Benz Stadium playing the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, that's a big jump for a lot of these young guys.
Well, I would say this. Don't you think, though, that a lot of the younger guys are getting reps in the games? It seems that it's the starters who are the ones that are not getting the game reps. They're getting the joint practice reps, and they're saving those reps for the back-end players, I guess, to kind of battle it out in the preseason games.
Yeah, in some cases, but there are some young players who do have prominent roles on this team that aren't really getting that game experience because they're getting kind of pulled and preserved for the regular season. And there's some of those players that really could use those reps. But I mean, yeah, by and large, you're seeing a lot of these depth players get these reps and everything like that. But I mean, like I said, it's so hard to simulate the game speed and the physicality and the different, having to think on your feet and be able to do all these different things in practice. Right. As beneficial as it may be, it's just very hard to sort of go through all that and get everybody prepared. And just, the season's in a couple weeks here.
Yeah, I agree with that. You're right. There are some young players. One's Devonta Smith. The other one, Jalen Reagor. You got those two wideouts. Kind of give me your overview of, after two games, where this wide receiver room stands, because I'm not sure that we know what's going to happen with Travis Fulgham, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I guess Quez Watkins has opened eyes. Where's John Hightower? Give me your overview of what you've seen from the wideouts.
Well, it's really interesting because outside of the top four guys, being Devonta Smith and Jalen Reagor and Greg Ward and Quez Watkins, there's a lot of question marks. Devonta Smith's going to be the top receiver on this team, just a very nuanced route runner, savvy, very polished, detailed, good hands. He showed a little bit of rust last week, but that's to be expected. I mean, the guy missed most of August with dealing with that MCL injury, and he didn't believe that he was rusty. But I mean, I think that some of those balls that bounced off his hands, he comes down with. But I mean, he's going to be the top receiver. Jalen Reagor is going to be the speed guy, the elusive guy. They're going to move around, get him looks out of the backfield, get him the ball in space, and take advantage of his explosive traits. And then you have Greg Ward, who's your steady slot option. I think if the season were to start today, I think Greg Ward would be your number 3 option. Not explosive by any means, but he's solid, steady, going to catch the football, move the chains. You know what you have there, which is why he only played 4 snaps last week. No need to really get him out there and get reps when you need to really see what you have in these other guys. And Quez Watkins, I think, is going to be a complementary piece, a rotational piece that's going to be – they're going to have certain plays for him to take advantage of his dynamic ability and he's going to be another guy that can take the top off of a defense, and they need to find ways to get him the ball creatively in space and take advantage of his big play ability, which you started to see last season towards the end of the season, what he's able to do. So I think there's going to be a lot of packages for him as well. I think he's more of the wide receiver 4 right now. I think that role could certainly elevate as the season progresses. And then you have a lot of question marks there after that. Travis Fulgham has had a relatively quiet summer. He only played 14 snaps last week, had 1 target, really hasn't flashed or taken that next step that you want to see after that 4-week outburst of production last season. You really haven't seen much from him since then. Obviously, there's been a lot of variables that have played into that. And J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's there, of course, and John Hightower. Those guys are all sort of vying for that 5th spot, and it's really come down ultimately to their performance on Friday night.
So let me ask you, I know that you are big on the draft, so you know a lot of these younger guys, Andrew. Should we buy into what we're feeling and seeing from Quez Watkins? Can he have an impact in the offense?
He absolutely can. And the reason why I say that is he's vastly improved as a route runner. And the route running department, there's few corners that can really keep up with his quickness. He has very little wasted movement in and out of his breaks, good hands, and I think he just looks like a more refined player. When he came out of Southern Mississippi last season, I saw him as a raw prospect that had a lot of intriguing intangibles, but really needed time to let that sort of marinate, get him with an NFL coaching staff, have him work on some of the finer nuances of the position. But he really looks like he attacked the offseason with a purpose, and you're starting to see that pay off. It paid dividends throughout the summer in practice and in the game situation. So he's the real deal, and I think moving forward he's going to carve out a role. Like I said, I don't know if he's going to be a volume player. I think if the season started today, like I said, Greg Ward would probably be the third option. But I think Quez Watkins is going to really turn some heads this season.
Yeah, that's an added bonus if you can get something from a guy that maybe you didn't have a lot of expectations coming into for. And let's kind of go to the running back room and kind of hammer that out and see how you're seeing that entering this Jets game here, because I think it's still a little murky behind what's going on with Miles Sanders. I say murky is we just don't know what the roles of those guys might be. So what have you seen through 2 preseason games from some of these guys?
Yeah, so basically Miles Sanders is going to be your 3-down runner. I don't know if they're going to throw a lot at him this year and try to wear him down. I think he's best when he's fresh, and hopefully they utilize him a lot more than the previous regime, because I think he's so dynamic with the ball in his hands. You saw his ability to hit the crease and really take it the distance. He has that explosive big play ability. And then you have Jordan Howard, who I think can lessen some of the load from Miles Sanders and grind out those tough yards. Not going to catch the ball, obviously, but he's going to be a short yardage guy, probably steal some goal line carries. And then if the Eagles have a lead, I think he's going to be someone that could really bleed the clock out. And then you have Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell, who I think are tremendous change-up running backs that can catch the football. They're elusive in the open field, present a lot of matchup issues. And then possibly you have a guy like Jason Huntley, who could sort of prompt the Eagles to keep 5 running backs, because he is a good returner. He can contribute on special teams, and he's another guy that can be one of those change-up guys. I don't know if you can get him through waivers, because he was a 5th-round pick, and he has shown a little bit of ability this summer to have that that burst and springiness to him. Looks like he shot out of a cannon at times. I like what I've seen from him. So, and I think there's a great deal of teams that would vying for his services as a depth player should he get cut. So there's possibility that they could keep 5 guys, but I think that they're likely to keep 4, but I certainly think that you can make a case for keeping 5.
Andrew DiCecco, football at 4, Eagles and Jets Friday night, both in a joint practice today, where the observations from many was that the defensive line kind of dominated the day, which should be expected. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, obviously Derek Barnett, what you got up front, Javon Hargrave, that's going to be a very you need that defensive line. But have you learned anything about Jonathan Gannon and his defense with how he's going to use the other guys, the Kerrigans, the Averys? I don't know that that's become clear yet, but have you got a little bit of a read on how Jonathan Gannon's defense might work?
Well, he showed a little bit more than he did the first game. He was very vanilla in the debut and the preseason opener, but against the Patriots, you saw sort of how he could use that Sam linebacker position. I thought that he moved Jannard Avery right up in the line of scrimmage and have him shooting the gaps. But like I said, the Sam linebacker spot, I've said this before, they're going to be, the way that he envisions it, it seems like, is to have that change-up fastball coming off the edge, like a Jannard Avery, like a Patrick Johnson, the rookie linebacker from Tulane, who I think is, obviously it's going to be between Jannard Avery and Patrick Johnson, with Joe Osman being released this afternoon. But I think that he has a role for that Sam linebacker spot. The two primary linebackers are going to be Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson. But you didn't really see much in terms of coverage or anything like that. I don't think they want to tip their hand one way or the other. That's exactly why joint practices are so important, because they're able to do all these different, give all these different looks and really get everybody in position and see what they like and see what they don't like, and different packages and formations. But as far as what I gauged from Jonathan getting through 2 preseason games, not a whole lot, but I'm excited to see what it's going to look like when the regular season rolls around. We do have a lot of different pieces, and it'll be interesting to see how he chooses to deploy them.
Yeah, I think well, let me ask you this. Do you anticipate seeing the starting players play on Friday night?
Well, that's a tough question, because you can make a case for it. I personally would, because Jalen Hurts played 10 snaps against the Steelers. Only had 4 starts last season. So again, to make that jump from a preseason game in August to the bright lights of the 1:00 game on September 12th against the Falcons, that's a big ask for any player, but definitely a player with such a limited resume as Jalen. But then there's that fine line. Do you want to risk exposing a player to injury that is so important to the team's success? Devontae Smith, I think he needs some reps. He played 26 snaps the other night, but I think that he's another one that needs to build that chemistry with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
I mean, so if it's me, I'm playing the starters. Do I think that it's going to happen? Based on some of the answers you've sort of heard, if you're looking to poke and prod with some of those answers, I would have to say that you're not likely to see too many starters play on Friday night.
I would agree with you. Let's see where these guys are in your mind right now. In or out? J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, in or out?
I think he's out.
That's a disappointing end to a second-round pick there. All right, what about John Hightower?
Well, to elaborate on that, I thought that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was going to be someone who looked like he was turning the corner and proving to be a multi-purpose player, added value as a special teams guy, but he really he looked like against the Steelers, he made a nice tackle, but then he only played 4 snaps on special teams, whereas Travis Fulgham played 11. Travis Fulgham looked adept at playing special teams, and he's a guy who I think is in contention, probably the front runner for that 5th spot.
All right, I agree with you. I'm kind of disappointed, and I don't want to say I'm disappointed in Sirianni so much, but I felt that if you were going to get something from Arcega-Whiteside, it's because of this coaching staff, and I think this kind of shows me that there's nothing to get out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like if they couldn't get it out of him, there must not be anything. What about John Hightower?
John Hightower is someone who I think, if you're looking, when you're looking at traits, especially for that final spot, he has that speed. He's a good route runner, but tracking the ball has always been a problem for him. I think he's someone you can get through waivers safely and sort of develop him on the practice squad. Not exactly a young prospect at 25 years old. Hasn't been consistent enough to warrant that final spot. So I think he's out.
John Hightower, a pick from last year as well. It looks like, as we kind of talked about, Watkins has kind of performed. Hightower might be the guy who becomes the odd man out of that group. What about Jason Huntley, the running back?
I just going through the roster here. I mean, earlier this summer, I thought that he had a shot at sticking as the 5th running back, but I think that he's out. He's another guy that they're going to probably hope to get through waivers, but I think he might be one of those players that gets claimed by another team who's in dire need of running back depth.
You got the interesting draft picks here. Jacoby Stevens, who has been linebacker. He's missed some time with a hamstring. Do you anticipate him making the team?
I think he might be one of those players. You know how every year someone tends to get a phantom IR stash or or an injury designation. I think that they really like him, but he's a raw player, and you wonder if he's going to be able to contribute immediately. If anything, he'll be a special teams demon and make his mark there. I think he's going to stick in some capacity.
All right, Josiah Scott is the corner they traded for. Is there a spot for him on this roster?
Yeah, I think he makes the team, and one of the added benefits of Josiah Scott is that he can play the nickel. That's really all, given his size, that's all he can play. But it gives Avonte Maddox flexibility to move around and give Jonathan Gannon flexibility to deploy him however he sees fit. He can play safety. He can give teams a number of different looks with Avonte Maddox. So having Josiah Scott is an added bonus.
All right, yeah, these are a couple of guys that will probably be on that bubble, and Friday night could be a big night for. You look at that guy too, like Hassan Ridgeway, because he's got two rookies he's battling with to make this team.
Yeah, Hassan Ridgeway has always flashed in his past couple of seasons, but he's always struggled to stay healthy. I think he's played in 14 games in 2 seasons. Hasn't flashed particularly during the summer sessions, summer practice sessions. So I think he's someone that makes the initial 53-man roster, but I think you could see the Eagles look to the waiver wire for a player that they like a little bit better, that they prefer, and maybe has a little bit more upside and stability there, because there is depth concerns there at defensive tackle after Milton Williams.
I guess I don't know that it's a big night for, obviously I don't think Dillard is even going to play, but how do you anticipate the team making a trade involving Dillard? There's been some murmurs that the teams are calling for him. Do you see Dillard on the team September 12th?
Well, if I'm the Eagles, I'm not going to be too quick to unload Dillard without knowing what you have in the Raven Clark. Because then all of a sudden you're looking at Brett Toth or swinging Jack Driscoll out there to play tackle on a pinch or something to that effect, and then you severely deplete the depth on your offensive line. I think if Raven Clark looks like the player that they envisioned when they brought him on initially as a free agent, then I think you sort of field some calls on Andre Dillard. But as we've seen in the past, the Eagles have been just suffering just ravaged by injury on the offensive line, and it can quickly dwindle down. What looks like a luxury now tends to sort of dwindle down as the season goes on, and then that war of attrition. So I wouldn't be so quick to unload Andre Dillard.
Yeah, that should be something to keep an eye on. Do they get a call? Do they get, if someone offers you a third-round pick, do you change your mind on that?
Oh, a third-round pick, absolutely. However, I don't know, given he's only played 16 games in the NFL, is 25 years old. I believe I think he's 25 years old, and then doesn't have an illustrious resume. There's questions there about, play strength, and there's just a lot of concerns swirling around Andre Dillard that I don't know if the team's going to be willing to part with a third-round pick. I could see a 5th or a 6th-round pick for Andre Dillard, but when you're looking at it in terms of that, the Eagles are better off just keeping him on the roster.
Yeah, that one's one to keep an eye on, and I guess this season's going to start with Zach Ertz on the roster. Is that what we're feeling?
That's been what my gut's been telling me. I think Zach Ertz is going to open the season on the roster. I think the Eagles are going to use a lot of 2 tight end looks, and when they go 3 wide early in the season, I think Greg Ward's going to be the third option.
All right, Eagles, Jets, Friday night right here, 97.3 ESPN. They close out the preseason, and obviously Joe Ostman, by the way, got waived today. Any surprise there from you?
He's someone that's been snake bitten, unfortunately, the past couple summers with injuries, and the Eagles definitely liked him. That was very obvious, and they envisioned a role for him. When I was at practice, he was very active, and they used him a lot in different looks and things like that. But unfortunately, if you're not available and you need to get down to a certain number, how do you justify keeping somebody around? I don't know that teams are going to be jumping at the chance to add a Joe Ostman to their roster right now, given the concussion situation. If they want to bring him back and revisit that at another time, I think that he'll be available. So, but right now, the battle to look at is going to be that Sam spot with Jannard Avery and rookie Patrick Johnson.
Last thing for Andrew DiCecco, the linebacker spot is obviously you brought Wilson in, you have Singleton, and I think a lot of unknowns there. But what has your evaluation of the linebackers been through 2 games?
Well, I try not to make too much of two preseason games, but Mike, what I will say is that I've been thoroughly impressed with the linebacker situation. I would say the top three. Alex Singleton has played 38 snaps in 2 games, 13 tackles, one of them being for a loss. He's always around the football. I think his skill set really complements Eric Wilson, who's more of a rangy, sideline to sideline, coverage acumen type player. And then TJ Edwards, to me, returned for his 3rd training camp looking in the best shape that he's been in. He looks leaner. He looks quicker, more fluid in coverage. And I think that he did that knowing that, you want to make yourself valuable and useful to the coaching staff and to be able to see the field and not just be typecast as this 2-down run defender who's just looked at as more of a thumper. He's 6'1", 240, but he's moved a little bit better. He had a nice pass breakup last week. So I think the top 3 are in pretty good standings there. And then that's when you look at the Sean Bradleys and Jacoby Stevens and players of that mold. Davion Taylor, you don't really know when he's going to be available. So, I mean, there's a lot of question marks after that, but I think the top 3 have shown some promise.
All right, Andrew DiCecco is back on Friday to preview the Eagles and the Jets, and, of course, you can only hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. DiCecco, NFL. Follow him on Twitter, InsideTheBirds.com, and the Inside the Birds podcast powers football at 4. All right, Andrew, take care, pal. Good stuff, man.
You too, Mike. Good talking to you.
As always, Andrew DiCecco. Always enjoy football conversation with him, Eagles and Jets. It's brought to you this hour by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. It is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.